Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Follow Your Passion, Personal Interest Projects, PIP, PIP for students. This is your chance to learn how personal interest projects are being used in remote and/or hybrid learning environments to provide students with opportunities to follow their passions. My name is Rosie O'Brien Wojtek, and I'm an Assistant Executive Director for the Connecticut Association of Schools. This is a follow-up webinar based on conversations during session 2, a panel discussion on connecting and engaging students during our Closing the Digital Divide conference on September 17th, 2020. You can view that session and the entire conference on our CAS website. This webinar is being brought to you in part by our corporate partners, Justin, Horstman, Liberty Bank, the Connecticut Army National Guard, and Pullman and Comley. We thank them for their continued support for CAS professional development for all principals and educators in Connecticut. We're very excited to bring you this webinar and glad that you're joining us here today. Just to let you know, this session will be recorded and posted on the CAS website so that you can view it later and share it with your colleagues as well as your faculty and staff. Please use the chat feature as a way to stay actively engaged in the learning during the session and to let us know if you have any technical issues, because we will be monitoring the chat. In addition, we'll be monitoring the Q&A feature, and we'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can during this session. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you our presenters for this webinar. Dr. Elizabeth Ratty is a research specialist of Skills 21 at EdAdvance. She was a classroom teacher for 16 years and now works with middle and high school students on challenge-based learning projects. She supports the Skills 21 National Science Foundation research projects and works with teachers and students on developing solutions to real-world problems in STEM. Her background is in math education and special education, and she currently works with teachers who are learning to teach and engage students in online instruction. Joining Dr. Ratty today is Matt Mervis, Director of Skills 21 at EdAdvance. Matt has worked as an entrepreneur, a consultant, and ed tech product developer for nearly 30 years. He served in roles including classroom teacher, district technology director, professional development specialist, and innovation designer. Matt brings a unique set of skills and experiences to help lead the exceptional team at Skills 21. In addition, we have 2 teachers who have been using PIP with our students. It's my pleasure to also welcome Aimee Shuhart from Woodbury Middle School and Brooke Matuszczak from Wamogo Middle and High School. Again, we're all really excited to learn as much as we can about PIP and how we can use this pedagogy to engage, motivate, and enhance the learning of students across Connecticut. It's now my pleasure to turn this webinar over to Dr. Elizabeth Ratty. Take it away, Liz.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. We are really excited to be talking about the Personal Interest Project, or PIP as we have come to call it fondly. This was a project we started last year, and we are just really excited to share it with everybody and anybody that's interested. So there's my fancy picture, but the introduction that Rosie gave really tells you everything about me. So I don't need to say much else. Matt?
Yeah, no, nor I think we're in good shape. Just thank you all for making this time, and thanks so much to Brooke and Aimee for joining us so you can kind of hear what this looks like in the front line, so to speak, both in Zoom and in person. So awesome.
Fantastic. Brooke, do you want to just say hi and tell us what you teach at Wamogo?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. First off, I am a business and technology teacher at Wamogo Regional High School located in Litchfield, Connecticut. And I ran the PIP project last year when we were doing distance learning, and perhaps we'll utilize it again this year.
Might not be on yet. Okay, that's all right. She'll be on soon. I'll turn it over to Matt.
Awesome, great. So let me just tell you quickly a little bit about Skills 21 and our background. So Skills 21 is a team at EdAdvance, the Regional Education Service Center. Our office is in Litchfield, and we serve towns from just south of Danbury up to the Massachusetts line, and then from the New York border over to roughly the Route 8 corridor. We've been lucky enough over our nearly 20 years working in Connecticut to operate with the support of our other REST colleagues in other parts of the state. So We work both in Western Connecticut, but we work with schools in the central part of the state, cities, rural districts, suburban districts, and the like. And it has been a great and fascinating run. And just like everybody else, the last 9+ months now is 8 to 9 months is presenting all sorts of interesting challenges. But our legacy you can see in that picture. So this is a couple students who are on their way down to receive an award. They're in the theater of the Oakdale Theater. And so every year in early June or late May, we run a competition, pitch competition called Expo Fest. It's a student film festival, a pitch competition. You walk into the dome of the Oakdale and there are 50 student teams in trade show style tables with logos and innovations and costumes. It's a really fun, high energy event. And we work with schools and teachers and students, kind of working backwards from late May, June, where they pitch their innovation through the year, where they are doing challenges in a wide range of areas from computer science to NGSS or pure STEM projects, entrepreneurship, digital media, films, kind of a wide range of topics. And we work with about 1,200 students a year. And ultimately driving to the 4 bullets that you see there. We're trying to improve academic outcomes for kids, 21st century skills, how they think about STEM and entrepreneurship as they move towards college and career, and how they work with students from different backgrounds across the state. So that's who we are, that's our DNA, and our thing that we're known for in Connecticut, although we're still a little bit of I hope, a little bit of a well-kept secret, our students innovating shoulder to shoulder. So it's been a really interesting journey for us working with schools doing project-based learning, both in team settings and also the personal interest project. So I think the best way to describe kind of how we move from what you see there at the Oakdale to our current programming in remote and hybrid is a quick video that we put together last year, and it will kind of key us up nicely for exploring PIP in a little bit more detail. And Liz, you may just have to, there we go. Perfect.
Each year, Skills 21 at EdAdvance engages over 1,000 students in 10 different challenges, including STEM, digital media, advanced manufacturing, computer science, and more. As the COVID-19 crisis unfolded, Skills 21 adapted a number of these challenges to support students during remote learning. Throughout the spring of 2020, the Skills 21 team worked with principals, teachers, and students as students completed their films, team projects.
Nice to meet you. I'm Naka. I'm Georgia. And I'm Faiza, and we are Kelta.
And capstone projects in preparation for a first ever online Expo Fest. In addition to the team's work, Skills 21 stood up a new curriculum and platform for student personal interest projects. Over 300 students from 10 districts followed their passions and created personally meaningful projects, which illustrate high levels of engagement and rigor.
I want to create a song that encompasses everything I love about jazz, from the chord progressions to the rhythms and improv. Now I'm going to learn how to code a video game in Scratch, and then I'm going to turn it into an app. Now that we have time and we have our PIP competition, I'm going to create a painting based off of the dance lesson by Edgar Degas. Hi, I'm Kaden and I'm the founder of the Care Kit Foundation. We will be giving free backpacks to children of all ages in foster care.
Skills 21 is collaborating with a number of districts to extend these remote learning supports for the fall of 2020. Want to learn more? Email us at info@skills21.org.
All right, so that was our brief intro to some of the work that we've done. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this all came to be and how we designed the personal interest project. So this, I was the lead writer of the curriculum based on my work in Capstone. So we, since 2016, have been doing a lot of work, or earlier, on high school juniors and seniors doing Capstone projects, which are independent. Kind of the background of Capstone and what we know now, and what we saw going on, we thought that we could do a personal interest project. So it was a Capstone light. We broke the project down into 3 phases. They are discover, create, and share. Each phase has 4 activities. That there is an artifact that they create for the end of each activity. So there end up being about 12 artifacts. Students create a project portfolio in our online environment. There's a teacher dashboard, so teachers can manage the projects on the other side. And then it all ended with a challenge and competition as part of Expo that students could opt to participate in. It was not a mandatory part of doing PIP. So that was a choice for the students to make. So as I was designing it, and we talked as a team a lot about what were the priorities in this design. And student choice has always been really important to us. It's definitely a key driver for the work that we do and any problem-based, challenge-based learning. So we wanted to make sure students had a lot of voice and choice. We wanted it to be hands-on and active. If you remember what the spring or March or April looked like as we started to dive into these kids are home for the long haul, and they were doing a lot of Google Docs and Google Forms. Most schools were not doing any in-person instruction. It was all asynchronous, and it was a lot of just screen time and staring at a screen. So we wanted to get kids away from the screen, doing something active. We knew that kids within days or weeks were already feeling isolated. So we thought that we needed to involve collaboration. So 8 of our activities force the students to collaborate with someone else, whether it's someone in person at their own home, or if it's through Zoom or phone calls or emails, just, you know, some other way to connect with others. It was a way for kids to demonstrate learning in not just filling out a Google form or a Google Doc. We wanted to make sure that there would be a public profile for them to share at the end that they could use for college or a job or anything else. And we always want to make sure that it's easy for the teachers to manage. This is a pretty granular view of what PIP looks like, but we took some time to figure out what were the high leverage skills or those 21st century throughout the process. And we found that students were using skills like communication, brainstorming, decision-making, planning, doing research, having to use time management, lots of opportunities for personal reflection, and there's opportunities to use and to learn digital media and technology. Every activity that we wrote has this kind of format. So every activity starts with a little video, and the video stars me telling you kind of what you're going to do for the activity. So if you don't want to read the directions, or you're not a really strong reader and you just want to kind of get the directions in between 30 seconds and a minute, there are short videos where I tell you all about what you can do and what you should be doing. And each activity also features these 3 icons you see. So one shows you exactly what you're going to be doing, what the work is. One icon indicates where there's an opportunity for collaboration, and this final icon indicates what you are actually uploading to your Launchpad profile. So the first phase is broken into 4 activities. Like I said, the first activity, I'll just quickly go through these. Kids are talking about their passions. The second activity, they are brainstorming about what they are going to learn, solve, make, or do for this project. In the third activity, they are taking some of those ideas from learn, solve, make, do, and narrowing them down to 2 or 3 ideas and fleshing them out a little bit. And then finally, the last step in this discover phase is their project proposal. So I have a project here, being gluten-free, dairy-free in the midst of madness. And did Aimee hop on yet?
I've been here. Yep, I'm here.
Aimee, this is one of your students, right?
It sure is. It's Caitlin.
Yeah, can you tell us maybe a little bit? I picked her in this first phase because I thought her inspiration for doing this project was kind of cool.
So actually, it's not Caitlin, it's Eva. She was diagnosed with a pretty serious gluten and dairy allergy during the course of last year. And when we pivoted from doing the Expo Fest team-based projects to going to Pip when we went full remote, she really turned something that was a hardship for her into something that was a positive. She turned it into learning everything that she could about being gluten-free and dairy-free, and ended up basically creating a cookbook for herself of all of her favorite recipes. So it was pretty impressive the way that she was able to embrace that and turn it into something that was useful for her and also for others.
Yeah, great. And then I picked Brooke as a story. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about Caden's inspiration.
Sure. So similar here at Wamogo, we transitioned from our team projects in the spring, and Caden had the opportunity to continue something that he's very passionate about and did a lot of work with his mother to provide for those who don't have as much school supplies, backpacks, and so on. And the work at home just really gave him the time to dig deeper into something that he cared deeply about and make greater connection with his mom. It was really cool to see come to fruition.
So he made these care kits for kids in foster care. It was very, do you know how many kits he ended up making?
Don't know, I never got to follow up with him at the end of the school year, but I do know that he actually distributed them, able to see it full circle, which was tremendous.
Fantastic. So these are the students that I just thought had a great kind of beginning story as far as where they were discovering and what they were discovering, to inspirational stories. The second phase of Pip is create, and this is where the bulk of the work is taking place. So the first activity is investigate, and this is the research phase. And unlike a capstone or our team projects where there really is a pretty heavy research requirement, for a Pip, the research was really required so that kids could get the resources they would need. So they did not need to go to academic journals or, research in that way, but they did need to gather the resources. So if they were going to learn something new, where were they going to learn it? If they were going to do something new, how were they going to do it? TikTok, when we surveyed the kids at the end, the TikTok activity has nothing to do with the app. It's about creating a time management plan. And this was the activity that kids rated as the most helpful and most important activity that they did to be able to finish. Time management is consistently a problem for lots of people, not just kids. And this is really, it's a very independent project. These kids were not having any face-to-face contact with their teachers. It was sometimes through Zoom, and, it was very independent. So Ready, Set, Pitch is the first chance kids got to tell somebody else about their project and record their pitch and then their person's feedback on it. And then the final activity is documenting your process. We call it Tell All About It, and that is an opportunity for them to add posts to their Launchpad website. So let me pull up an example. So this is Ruby learning to skateboard, and she had such a cool process from the beginning to the end. So Aimee, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Ruby's is my favorite project. She just decided she wanted to learn how to skateboard. And it's such a simple concept, and in and of itself wouldn't have been that mind-blowing, except that the way she documented her process, I thought was really impressive and really honest. You know, going from basically she had to persuade her parents to allow her to do this, to watching her parents let her fall and be okay with her falling, assembling the skateboard with her stepfather, decorating it, and then going out to the tennis courts and teaching herself how to skateboard. But really it was her voice and the way that she chronicled her journey in this that I think sold me and sold a lot of other people on her project.
Yeah, I can bring up her project because she has a pretty neat post. You know, she really did, like Aimee was saying, document, you know, kind of step by step, figuring out where she was going to skate, decorating it. The story of her making the skateboard with her stepfather was just so sweet that it was a way for them to bond. Unfortunately, we can't show her whole video right now. We just don't have access to it in the same way that we would like. But, you know, there she is talking about, you know, her whole process. All right. And then Brooke, this was one of Gary, our coach's favorite projects. So this is, Brooke, what was the name of it? Backwater Reviews?
This is one of mine.
One of yours, Aimee, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, Backwater Reviews was a student who was super into the grunge movement in the early 90s, and he decided that he was going to create reviews, musical reviews of the albums and make recommendations. So he did that. It was pretty impressive. And he actually taught himself how to write reviews by reading other music reviews and learning how to best present that content. And he actually came up with his own style of how, like a consistent style of, maybe we can open one, because it was neat to see that evolve. No? Yeah, that's okay. It was just neat to see him evolve from reading a lot of other people's styles and then really coming up with his own. It was a process, and he did something that he loved, which was listening to music. And that's kind of what Pip is all about, is taking a passion that you already have and engaging in that in a little deeper way.
Yeah.
I just want to amplify that a little bit. I mean, we see this in a lot of the projects, but you see it in these two, right? These are two things that the two students were really personal about and interested in. And sometimes folks will think, oh, a personal interest project, they're just going to do a thing that's fun to them. And it's really that process. It's the steps they go through.
Mm-hmm.
Liz has done a good job, and the teachers do an amazing job working with what we call a learning stretch. So how do you take something like, I want to learn how to skateboard, and make it a learning stretch? So it's got collaboration and design and some engineering and some problem solving, and really hits those high leverage skills. So we were really gratified. I mean, it's not to say there weren't a couple projects where students, you know, took something that was very personal, and you could see how it could be more of a learning stretch. And we're working on tools and strategies to do that. But, you know, very consistently across both these guys' classrooms, we saw kids just, you know, using the process to go through in a way that really deepen their learning and the skills that they took away from it.
Yes, it was very, very cool. Let's see. Oops, what I wanted to do. And whose project was building cabinets? Was that you also, Aimee?
Yes.
Put three of yours in a row. Sorry.
That's okay. This is Caitlin, and she really decided that she wanted to learn some basic carpentry, but she decided to do it to help her mom, because her mom is a nurse, and during COVID was understandably faced with a lot of additional stress and anxiety. And her mom, typical of most of us, have that pot and pan drawer that is always disorganized, and you have to take everything out to get the one pan you want at the bottom. So she decided that she wanted to learn how to build a new cabinet for her mom that would house all of her pots and pans in a more organized fashion. So she ended up doing some basic sketching and learning carpentry with her dad and documenting that process. And in the end, it was a gift for her mom for Mother's Day.
Oh, I love it.
This was,
Go ahead. Oh, I think I lost you, Liz, or you cut out there for a second. Brooke,
Yeah.
Brooke, I'm wondering if you, the create phase of the project, right, discovers this personal exploration. Create is really where they're doing, and then sharing is how they document it at the end. The create phase sometimes went on for weeks, right, because they were really in the process of building out these projects. How did you, Brooke, and then Aimee, how did you kind of keep the momentum going, keep track, keep in touch? Again, given the setting of that time, we were full remote. So how did that long create phase go for you, and how did you manage it?
For my classes, I tried to keep a consistent schedule where we all touched base. We did do it live at the beginning of our time, our designated time. And behind the scenes, I had the kids create a bit of an extra log to just fill in where they were each day, set a small goal for their daily work, and then reflect on it at the end of their working time. So that was just something that I had them do above and beyond the PIP launch, which was fantastic as another layer. But that allowed me to go in and to see that they were accountable, on their schedule, but also if they were running into any issues. And I have to say that, reiterating this process of their learning, even if they chose something that on the surface seemed really more fun and simple, I had a number of kids through those day-to-day reflections end up pivoting in a big way to pick something that maybe aligned more with something they were doing outside, for example, like decide to help their family in a more meaningful way. Or one of my projects, and perhaps it will come up in a bit, but a student completely changed their career goal after pivoting. So those daily check-ins I found really useful.
And Aimee, how about you? How'd you manage the long create phase?
Well, that's a great question, Matt. I still don't know if I can answer that now. It was a very interesting journey in the spring, but we were live teaching in Region 14. We were expected to be basically live teaching from the first day of being shut down in early March, which was fortunate because we kept to some of the same routines for kids. And as those of you know who work with middle school students, they could benefit from a little additional reinforcement of those routines. So we did do live teaching. I did have daily Google Meets with kids, and often we would start off as a whole class and then break off into smaller groups where I was still having them share their screen with me so I could talk them through some of the things that they were working on. Similar to what Brooke mentioned, at the beginning of each week, I would build for the kids a week at a glance planner, which took the curriculum that Liz wrote and turned it into learning targets for the week and success criteria for the week, and what really needed to be accomplished, what deliverables needed to be accomplished during the week. So it was a way for kids to see at a week at a glance, here's what I'm doing this week in capstone. This is what I'm going to, this is how I know I'll be successful. And at the end of the week, this is what I know I'll have completed. So that was, I found that to be really helpful. We also had office hours, open office hours every day for an hour, where students were invited to just drop in if they had questions. And an hour was never enough because we had kids dropping in constantly, checking and touching base with us, which was gratifying because being so immediately cut off from our students and they from us, I think they really just craved that connection and those relationships that we had the good fortune to have built through the beginning of shutdown. So it was a combination of those daily check-ins, the week at a glance, reinforcing to kids that I was there for them no matter what, and doing some of my own modeling with my own PIP as I went through the process with them. I would model some of the things that I was doing in my own little mini version of a PIP.
Nice, thanks.
That's great. That's really helpful. And Aimee is not our only teacher that did their own PIP. At Pomperog, a teacher built his own kind of mini golf putt-putt course in his backyard, as it was really important to him that he go through the PIP process with his students. So it was really neat to see the kids, mirroring the teacher's process, or the teacher mirroring the kids' process. And just as we're showing these examples, I'm reminded of how, we were so isolated those first few months, but the connections kids made with their families during this time was so sweet. And to see even, Aimee's kids were in middle school and Brooke's were on the younger end of high school, but we had high school seniors building decks with their dads, and, kids just really connecting with their parents, or we had a lot of older kids doing things for younger siblings as well, whether it was helping them build a garden, or just so many stories came out of PIP of just really sweet family connections. I was reading through the Building Cabinets posts earlier today. Brothers in on the secret, her little brother's in on the secret because they found out, and she knew that if they were part of the secret, they wouldn't tell her mom, but if they just found out and weren't part of it, that they'd spoil it. So it was cute how she brought in these two younger brothers to help out with the work. So the third phase is share, and this is really kind of the culminating, obviously it is the culminating stage of these projects. The first thing we have students do in this phase is kind of build out a little bit more of their Launchpad, and I'll take you over to a full Launchpad website in a few minutes. They also create a short trailer, which we called Lights, Camera, Action. So it's usually a 15 to 45 second video that goes right on their pages to show the work that they have done. Then they do their final pitch. And again, we encourage them to do that pitch to an audience and get feedback from the audience. So they did it live and recorded it. And it was so important to us that we had a final reflection activity, that it wasn't just this final pitch and you could walk away. We really not only had them reflect on their own process, but also ask someone, and that most of them asked a parent to, or whoever lived at home, someone that lived at home with them, about what they saw for the student as they went through the process, both what they learned as far as a skill and what they learned about just doing a project like this. So let's see some examples. Brooke, this is the Beta Fish project. And this was just one of my favorite quotes, because I think the project started out and wasn't necessarily totally successful for what the student had initially planned. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, and this is one of my freshman Justin's project. And it's interesting because I feel one of the awesome parts about PIP is that it kept my students engaged in their own learning and discovering their own passions. And as you said, Liz, staying connected with people in their homes or electronically beyond their homes. And his project was a perfect example of this. He set out to learn more about beta fish, which I had never known Justin liked beta fish at all. So that was pretty amusing. And then he grew to talk about this with his mom and shop with his mom online and set a budget together. And the fact that he didn't know, what to do with 300 baby fish was pretty funny, and that then they need to live solo. So again, that whole process for him was just really neat to see. And I think that had we tried to continue on with the team aspect of Expo Fest or skills, a student like Justin might have felt like he didn't have a lot of say or a strong voice in the project, perhaps he would have gotten more distracted. But here he was able to really focus on something that he felt strongly about and learn from it and grow.
And I love that, you know, you could have probably, I don't know, maybe I would have assumed that like fish don't only have 1 or 2 babies at a time. Like, and you could have shut this down in the beginning and said, well, you're not going to be able to learn how to breed beta fish. They're going to have 300 fish. Like, what are you going to do with that? But to let him go through that process and discover it and be like, oh, so there's going to be 300 of them and they need to live solo. Like, I can't have 300 fish tanks in my house. So, you know, we talk a lot about letting kids kind of fail and the value of either failure or, and it wasn't really even a failure, just discovery, is it's so much more valuable when it comes naturally than, you know, when a teacher shuts you down at the beginning and says, well, that's not going to work. And this was another great project. And I think this is also yours, Brooke.
Yeah, so this is another freshman who made that major pivot that I was talking about. He, at the beginning, felt really strongly for the environment and a science research type project. And just like with the beta fish, I said, okay, if you really want to do a research project, then go for it. You absolutely can. And within a few weeks, he expressed a struggle. He wasn't feeling connected to the topic anymore. And he said, do you mind if I learn by myself how to use Unity, which is an incredibly complex video game software? And I said, you absolutely can pivot. You know, I'm here to help you along the way, no matter what, no matter how little time you have left, let's do this. And we did a number of Google Meet sessions together. At that time, I was like helping him find some YouTube videos to support his learning. And then in the end, and he reflected on this, he just was surprised himself at the progress he made and the learning that developed along the way. I was really, really proud of Evan for sticking with it. Because again, it's a very hard software program to use.
Yeah, this is this is what Launchpad looks like. And Evan's was a good example. So right here you have his and it's, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. So there is kind of the purpose of the trailer. Oh, I guess that's not even done. That's the Expo Fest date. In his share though, you got to see this video is really cool. And again, it's just about a minute. To see the actual game he ended up creating.
Hello, my name is Evan Briatico, and today I'm going to be showing you my Unity game that I created over the last month. Okay, so I'm just going to click play here, get right into it. I used to have a soundtrack right here, but there were a lot of audio errors between my voice and sound, so I can't have that. So I'll just click play. Here's your mission. So you have a scavenger, you have to collect all the cylinders around the levels. Once you collect them all, look some words at the top left. I tell you how many there are left.
Liz, we can't quite see
that. There's a 3-second delay until the next level.
You can't see it.
Oh. All right, so the controls are WASD, which is just basic gaming controls, and then there are concerns.
Sorry.
It may pop up in a different way.
Mouse looking.
That may be.
I have a cursor bar.
Can
so
you see
here's
it now?
the first level, nice little forest area.
Oh, I know why. So I'm not sharing my whole screen.
I can pick
Hold
up
on.
the sun.
I'm going to stop the share. I know how to do this. Don't worry.
So we had students uploading, as Liz is looking at that. There are several places where students upload video. And in the beginning, we were pretty concerned about that. We were like, oh, is this going to be too much of a stretch? Will they be able to handle it? And they really, I mean, Amy and Brooke can speak to it as well, but it seemed like the kids really quite naturally kind of found their voice and found the opportunity to do that. And in some cases, they were tasked to actually use the video to present something and get feedback from another student. And they recorded that feedback conversation as well.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, you bet.
All right, there we go. Let's play.
Hello, my name is Evan Briatico, and today I'm going to be showing you my Unity game that I created over the last month. All right, so I'm just going to click play here. Track right here, but there are a lot of audio errors between my voice and sound, so I can't have that right now. So I'll just click play. Here's your mission. So you have a scavenger, you have to collect all the cylinders around the levels. Once you collect them all, there's some words at the top left. They tell you how many there are left. And once you get them all, there's a 3-second delay until the next level. All right, so the controls are WASD, which is just the basic gaming controls. And then they're served. Then you can use the mouse to look at them. So they have cursor lock. So here's the first level, nice little forest area. I can pick up the cylinders, and at the top left, you can see the number going down. So it says all objects collected will now be rescued. A couple second delay, and now you're here.
So
Neat.
that was a pretty neat example. Let me get back to my PowerPoint. See this back to your screen. All right, there's my PowerPoint. So that was that project. So those were just examples of projects and kind of the process that students went through. At the end of PIP, we did do some, not scientifically completely validated research, but we gave students surveys, and we also surveyed parents and teachers and administration. And, when we set out to do PIP, again, we were really looking to get kids to do something different than what they were doing in most of their classes. And most of their classes, it was, single day assignments, fill this out, get credit for it. And kids, and it was very teacher driven. We heard a lot from kids that it was much more independent, it was hands-on, lots of appreciation for the ability to choose their own topics, be creative, and do something that was relevant to their own interests. Teachers seemed to really like it. Brooke and Amy are awesome, and anytime we ask them to talk about it, they're always willing. So I think it went really well for them. And the parents that we surveyed, 84% of them said PIP was more engaging than their child's other remote learning experience. And we had some really great quotes coming from students and teachers and parents. So just here's some examples. Very engaging, fun, and something that I wanted to do every day. I was proud when I completed it. And so that was something that we were excited to hear, that it was something that the kids wanted to do every day. You can read the teacher quote, but the parent quote also was really great. I very much appreciated this project being available for my child to participate in. She enjoyed doing it as well. Would like to see more of this type of project, even when regular school is back in session. So we were very excited that everybody seemed to be excited about it. And through the parents, we also heard that it was one of the only assignments they could get their kids to talk about. I mean, there's not much to share at the dinner table when you're just talking about the Google form, but when you're doing a project like this and kids needed to be sharing it, again, when they were all locked up with each other, it gave something to talk about. And Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, you bet. And we're coming up on 4:15, so certainly if there's any questions about anything you've seen so far, now's a great time to drop it into chat. We'd love to be able to address any questions that come to mind, and Brooke and Aimee, I'm sure, can provide some insights as well. It's interesting to think about this year. So everything you've seen was based on the reality of emergency remote learning, as opposed to, maybe this fall we'd call it more planful and ready remote and hybrid learning. And in some cases, in some of our schools, including Brooks, some full-time learning. So Pip is transitioned as well, and Aimee and Brooke are both working on team projects, but we have a number of schools that have not worked with us historically that are using Pip during their curriculum this year. And so it's a blend. In some cases, they're using it on the Wednesday remote day. Some are using it fully in person during their 2 in-person days. So it's really been an interesting experience for us, and will continue to be, to watch how a personal interest project is done when you're not just at home with all that time. How do you do it in a more blended environment between home and school, but still have it be highly personalized? So we organized our year this way across all of our various work that we do. We are treating the year very much like a remote year. Our expo, again, will be held between May 24th and 27th online. But we're really thrilled that all flavors of projects are in play. There are capstone projects happening, there are Pip projects happening, there are team projects happening, and there are films being created. So across those various kind of modalities and project types, we do a number of different things to try to be helpful. So one is coaching. We have an awesome coach who's literally a high school basketball coach as well, who works individually with each teacher and each group of students. And so, we really didn't know what that would look like, especially last year and this year. But Gary Robinson, who's our coach, meets occasionally in person, but mostly he is invited in via Google Meet or Zoom, and provides some direct support and instructional support and troubleshooting and some one-on-one kid conferencing. And that's been a really important ingredient for us. Whether a school's taken this all the way to Expo or not, just the ability to have someone there as an outside voice to support the teachers, and the kids really enjoy his presence. We lose the fact that he's 6'8". In a Zoom square, you really can't tell, but we brand him as Tall Gary, or Coach Tall Gary. So we certainly do as much PD and support as schools and teachers can find bandwidth and time for. One of the design principles of Pip was to make it so that it could be to some degree self-paced and blended. It's really cool to hear the kinds of augmentations that Brooke and Aimee created to make it manageable on a daily basis. So ideally, it wasn't a project that needed a ton of PD lift, but we certainly spent time working on how to use Launchpad and how to support kids as they go through. The challenge curriculum, number 3 down there, is actually the Pip curriculum or the team curriculum or capstone or films. We've taken all the curriculum that we use over the years and added more video and more self-pacing so that it can be supported both in person and during hybrid remote days. We have a huge tradition in number 4 there of doing inter-district collaboration. You'll remember right in the beginning, I said one of our key goals is to get kids together from different backgrounds. And I'll confess, we have not yet cracked the nut on this one. We're doing a lot of meetups with kids, but getting kids together across districts virtually has not yet been something we've pulled off. There's such pressure around schedules and routines that in the old days, getting a day and a field trip permission and a bus, that ritual we could hold together. We've not figured out yet how to actually bring that back in any kind of a virtual environment. And and hopefully the clock will run here and we'll be back to working with kids in person in that way. But that's an interesting aha for us. You've got a pretty good look at Launchpad, although we're happy to talk about it more. That's a piece of technology that we've built for ourselves over the years so that we can host and manage our challenges and our kids' projects and how we interact with them, and ultimately how judges interact with them. So that's a big piece of how we work in this virtual world. And then again, an online Expo Fest for those who want to. I think about 300 kids started PIPs last year. I'd say there's probably about 1,000 and change that will work on them this year, but 50 came to the expo. It's not a high pressure have to on our end, but we absolutely want to create a venue for kids who do want to exhibit their work and get that kind of feedback and opportunity to do that. You can kind of get the sense, I mean, always in a webinar like this, it's a careful blend of how we describe what we do. We're not really here to sell, we're here to share what we've done. But if folks have any questions about like the budget realities of how we work with schools, I'm happy to speak to those. I guess the short version, especially for PIP, there is a PIP PDF curriculum that lives outside of the platform. Liz, if you want to bounce back to those virtual supports for just a second, that'd be great. So we've shared that widely with anyone who's interested. It's a reference on the CT Learning Hub that the State Department has shared. So anyone who wants to just sort of see what we're doing, we just share that freely and availably for folks. So just know that that's a resource available to you. And I'm happy to chat with folks about any of the other kind of how we work with schools realities. In Brooke and Aimee's case, these are two teachers that we've had the pleasure of working with and their kids for many years. And part of what was cool though about PIP was both, how they navigated it. And if we had another hour, I would sit here and pick their brains about how they're navigating team projects, full team projects in remote and hybrid kinds of settings. And we'll, in many cases, I think as we move into post-Thanksgiving, do it more online. And I think this is one of the most interesting enduring research and just what do we know questions about this period is how do we not lose kids working collaboratively in projects? I think it's really critical and these folks are making that happen. But so just a way of saying that there's a number of ingredients that we're trying to test to make sure that it can work. Great, if you want to go on to those links, Liz. A couple quick reference links, and someone asked, by the way, in the chat if we'd be sharing the slides, and we absolutely will. So the platform itself, and anyone can sign up and kind of kick the tires for a student account or teacher account, is pip.skills21.org. There's a page off of our skills21.org website that has information about PIP, and you can navigate around easily and see the work that we're doing on teams and films and capstone as well. And then there's a showcase including, many of the projects that we shared today, but others as well in different categories: art, tech, kind of CTE oriented projects, culture, performance art. I mean, it's an interesting thing. We did not build the categories for Expo, for the competition, until we saw the projects. And it was very gratifying that among 50 projects, middle and high, they really were kind of widely distributed against a number of categories that were fun for us to look at and fun to explore and fun to have the judges look at as well. Alrighty. Liz will share in a second our email contacts, but I'm just seeing a little nub on the chat there. Is there anything else that's popped up?
I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. I'm curious how many students actually, I mean, you said overall how many students participated, but in a school or in a class like Aimee and Brooke, how many kids did you have working on projects at one time? How did kids decide whether they were going to work on them? Did you have a special class? How do kids get involved with this? I'm just curious.
Brooke, do you want to take that first? And then Aimee, or any order you guys like?
Okay, I can start. So I teach a unified arts class at Woodbury Middle School called Capstone. And the unified arts, so it's an elective based class. It's 2 trimesters versus 1, which is different for kids because typically they take a different UA each trimester. This one is a little unique. And last year I had 2 sections of students taking Capstone with about 20 students in each class. We started off where each class was doing a team-based Expo Fest project. When we transitioned to remote learning, I actually gave them the choice. I wanted them to, because I knew how hard it was going to be to continue to work on the team project while we were remote. I did have one small group from each of the sections continue with the Expo Fest project remotely, and then the rest of the students worked on PIP remotely.
So I'm just wondering if this would work for like upper elementary, 4th and 5th grades. Have you guys done anything with upper elementary?
Yep, we've had some 5th grade teachers looking at the curriculum, and I think we have a team that's going to be doing some 5th grade projects this coming year. Yeah, the activities are surprisingly adaptable to a pretty wide age range of students. So that's been gratifying for us. We're working on a new project right now around resiliency, where and some SEL, where the levels are much more nuanced. But Pip's been pretty good on the kind of 5 through 12 zone.
So one of the questions I think that a lot of people would have is, and that you see in the news all the time, are the kids that get lost, that don't log on, that may be starting a project. How did you, I mean, you must have had some students who you didn't check in every week with or whatever. I mean, they just didn't check in with you, not that you weren't trying to check in with them. And you gave us some really good strategies like daily check-ins, live teaching, week at a glance strategies for organization. But did you lose students along the way, and how were you able to bring them back? Anything else that you'd share with people?
I can certainly talk to that piece. I did have high school students who I think found ways to avoid the day-to-day check-ins early on. And what I managed to do was to say, hop on one Google Meet with me, please. Anytime, I'd be meeting with them at 8 p.m., noon, didn't matter. And then I just said, forget the pieces of the project or the grade or any of that. Let's just talk about your passions. And once I did that with every single one of my students, and we said, let's find something that you want to learn about first, and I'll get you the rest of the way. We'll help, we'll jump in, we'll be a team. And they came on board. So it was really about connecting them to something that they felt worthy of putting in the effort. But again, once I talked them through that and I said it could be anything at all, I truly found that they were willing and able to participate after that.
Cool. I have to tell you, I really love the skateboard example that you have, because we had a foster daughter and I can so relate to everything that you said, except that where on hers it was that she had bruises when she fell. Our foster daughter actually broke her arm. So, but it was kind of a similar experience. So I could really relate to that. If people want to get started in their schools and their classrooms with doing these kinds of PIP projects, what would you suggest they do?
Yeah, some of the links that are on the previous page would be a good starting place just to see what's there. But at pip.skills21.org, you can literally sign up. It uses a Google, so you use a Google account to sign in as a teacher. If for some reason your school's not listed there, because you basically kind of pick your school as you enter into the system at pip.skills21.org. Just let us know. You can reach out to me and I'll be happy to drop the school in. But one step is just to kind of get on the platform and take a look. And then we're really accessible. We just run informational Zoom sessions, Google Meet sessions. We can get to it pretty quickly. So if there's a group of teachers that are interested in looking at it as a team-based approach or a particular model, it is interesting. And Rosie, you asked about this, but even this year, we're seeing in some cases a department wants to take it on. So in Hamden, we're having the health and PE departments taking it on for all high school kids. And then so that those PIP projects will have a certain kind of a lens. We've had some gifted and talented programs that have wanted to do Genius Hour 20% style projects for a long time. So that's been a fit. We've had whole school models like in Naugatuck at City Hill Middle School. So there's different settings, and it's really just, if you have a vision for how kids can do personal interest projects as part of the curriculum, we've had enough experience now with it that I think we can probably kind of meet, visit, and find a good path.
Wow. So one last question.
I had one thing on about the underachievers, because I think that this can't be underscored enough from at least my experience. I was very happy to see that my classic underachievers are the ones that thrived with PIP. Because it's not just doing school, it's not being compliant, it's actually like digging deep into something that they care about and then performing. So these kids who have had maybe a hard time with doing school, have really thrived in this environment. That being said, the students that are typically like the overachievers, or the ones that are, you know, constantly like the best, they're the ones that had the biggest, I would say, learning curve, as far as getting used to this new way of engaging in their own learning.
Yeah. It's different than, you know, I was very good at school because school said, study these 10 words, I'm going to give you a test on them. And then I would study those 10 words and get 100 on the test. Pip is not that. Pip, you have to figure out, what are you going to do? What are you interested in? And the right answer is not what you can't play the game of what do you think your teacher wants to hear, because there isn't a right answer. And kids that are used to just doing well because they can give their teacher the right answer, it definitely is harder. And so we see the same with kids with learning disabilities. We get a lot of questions asked about, like, well, what do you do for your kids with, you know, different types of LD? And again, the answer is they choose their projects and they know their strengths and weaknesses. A kid who stinks at writing and hates reading, they're not going to decide to write a poetry collection. They're going to grow betta fish, you know, they're going to learn how to skateboard and they're going to document that. A kid who is terrible at math isn't going to start their own business or decide that they're going to create a mathematical model for snow days. Like, they're going to go and write the poetry collection. So, you know, there's, of course, we want kids to step outside their comfort zone, but in a way that doesn't necessarily reveal their biggest weakness.
And with that, I think that's a great lead in for my last question. And that is, what is the one big aha that you've had from working with the PIP program that you'd like everybody to know about? Or what is it that you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started working with PIP, that you want people to know? And we can just start with whoever wants to share first.
I think the biggest thing for me looking back was to help students understand that whatever they are passionate about was worthwhile to pursue. And just like what Aimee was saying, I found that kids were hesitant to do something that they loved because they didn't think it was good enough, big enough, you know, academically enhanced enough, or anything. And so I wish right from the beginning, I just broke down those barriers for them so that they could jump into their true passion.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I would say. I mean, I actually just met with Coach Gary this morning, and he walked me through some of the changes in the PIP platform, and I can't wait to start. I don't start this year until December 9th, and I'm like chomping at the bit, because I think that probably the hardest part of the process for my students last year was picking their topic, like picking what they wanted to stick with, for whatever reason. You would think that if you offer students choice that they'll naturally just choose something, but the thing of it is, like, it's almost too wide open for kids. So what I've been working on, what I talked with Gary about this morning, is how to provide more channels for kids to explore their interests. And I think that now we have the luxury of seeing the past PIP projects on the PIP showcase, which is amazing. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with looking at the PIP showcase with kids and looking at all those different categories that Matt was talking about earlier, and really showing that really anything is possible. Or maybe there's a category that's not even on there that they can create on their own this year. So, you know, really just being willing. And I think I would like to also do my own PIP again this year, because I think it helps to normalize the process for them, and what they struggle with, I can help them with in my own reflections. So I'll definitely continue that for sure.
Good. Well, that seems like a great place to wrap it. And thanks. I know we've gone over a couple minutes, but thank you all so much for all the questions and the input. Rosie, is there anything else we need to?
No, I'm looking forward to hopefully watching the Expo Fest for this year. Hopefully, I don't know if there's a way that you can let us know and we can publish that in the CAS News Blast so people can watch it, is that possible?
Absolutely. And if you have any
Perfect.
interest in judging, we always recruit judges on the Expo Fest page at skills21.org. There's a little section for judges. It's never too early. So, but yeah, we'll keep
Sounds
close
like fun.
touch about the year as it goes on.
And also, I think I heard something about a sequel that we might be able to do if you do something with teams and having them students doing projects and things. We might be able to pick up something with that later on. So yeah, definitely want to keep hearing what you're doing. This was a great conversation. Lots of amazing projects. It makes me wish I was a student again. So, or maybe even a teacher, but definitely my kind of learning. So we can't thank you enough for taking time today to share your personal interest projects known as PIP for students with us. And thank you, Liz, Matt, Amy, Brooke, for taking the time to be with us today, and keep up the great work. For anyone who wants to know more, they've given you their contact information, and we hope that we'll be seeing things throughout the year from all of you across the state and your student projects.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.